everybody. It is The Yard Sign, the most important relevant podcast in politics. Jonny Torres, your host as always. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Regardless, as many of you know, Floridians here, we don't hunker down for hurricanes, contrary to popular belief. Although California certainly got a taste of what it's like to be a Floridian this month. But
it was a Category 1. Let's all calm the F down.
Yeah, I know. But if you watch the media coverage, you would have think California got wiped off the map.
I was under the impression it was a Cat 3, Cat 4 when it was hitting, and then I look at it like, is that a 1? That's a 1. I turn it off immediately.
Right. They're like the devastation, the flooding,
the Hoa.
I still like using my Homestead joke. You know,
that's
every
good.
time we talk about hurricanes.
Yeah.
You know, the city's so nice they built it twice. Yeah. So
I just love learning new words like Punta Gorda.
Well, because it's also the 20-something anniversary of Hurricane Andrew. Anyways, but
I'm sorry, I wasn't from.
Well, I
wasn't from North Cuba when it hit.
I was there, but I wasn't there. Anyways,
allegedly.
Yeah. Well, hurricanes are definitely on our topic of discussion for today. Welcome to the Yard Sign. As you can see, Anibal David Cabrera joining me on the show today. So we're going to get off to a quick start as we talk about Trump and the first Republican debate that took place last week. Plenty to dissect there. We've also got Craig poll numbers that we're going to dissect from 538 because they do all the wonky work for us, and DeSantis's personal hurricane, political hurricane really, as he faces some issues here in his home state of Florida, and how those may affect his campaign. Well, that's what we're here to talk about. So let's jump right into it with my friend, who's now back and healthy and ready to tackle all of life's political controversies. How you doing?
I'm glad that I was the only one available. No, I'm kidding.
Everybody else is at Costco getting supplies and gas.
We did that over the weekend. It was perfectly fine.
Right.
It's fine.
We know better.
It's been good. We were traveling a lot, a bunch of weddings. We all got sick, and so now we're back. And everyone's healthy. So
because you were going to be here last week.
I was looking forward to it.
I know. And you missed Nate Ginter.
The wife said no.
And Joe Wicker.
And the wife said no.
I don't care who's on the show.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
All right. Well, somebody actually that we're working on is a good friend of ours, Christian Ziegler.
Oh, yeah.
So we're trying to figure it out with his schedule, but we're going to be hopefully talking to him soon in the next week or so to get his perspective. He's the state chairman for the Republican Party of Florida. He is also, intimately, directly involved with the Republican National Convention happening in Wisconsin, and of course, Florida has just been doing incredible things since he and Joe Girders have been in leadership. We now just utterly dominate in voter registration.
Correct.
By some ridiculous numbers. I haven't even checked it, but I just know it keeps going up.
The state is doing a great job.
Yeah.
Some local parties are not as enthusiastic about it, but the statewide,
we are flipping counties, though. I mean, they are literally flipping entire counties.
Florida is going to be like the red wedding when it comes to the redness of the state.
Well, that's the thing, and we'll certainly see what kind of impact that's going to have, and on not only this primary. I think the primary is where Florida is going to truly reveal itself the most, because we've got Trump and DeSantis both coming from the state of Florida, but also in the general election. I mean, it's an important state just solely based on the population.
Correct.
And we were concerned, obviously, 3 years ago when COVID hit and people started to move here. We were like, well, how's that going to affect our political environment? And so far, I mean, it's been fantastic for Republicans.
Well, one, Democrats didn't have the money to move from those states. It was more small business owners and middle management people that were able to moved. And a lot of them moved into Hillsborough County, and a lot of them into Miami, Orlando, the rest parts of Florida. And you realize how much growth occurred but that did not affect politically as much as you expected.
Yeah.
And that's what we saw in the 2020 election cycle, which was a great affirming response, because the governor kept on saying, look, I'm watching the registrations. We're fine. Nothing, no hanky-pankies happening.
Yeah.
It's on the up and up.
Well, what's funny is you've seen, I think, a lot of your more libertarian type people moved to like Texas, which is kind of strange, because in some ways, you know, in some ways and in some cities, Texas is more conservative even than Florida. But then a lot of the conservative influencers moved to Florida.
Correct.
And you continue to hear these stories about people who move their businesses here, and people who moved their entire livelihoods here because of the way that the pandemic was handled.
Yeah.
And while you haven't heard him beat that drum too much, but again, like, that's one of DeSantis's crowning achievements, and I think he needs to remind people of that. But getting into the debate and then the interview with Tucker, I mean, look, I'll be transparent. I didn't watch the interview.
I'll be honest, I just saw the highlight reel from some of the online people that we watch.
Right.
That do the, like, okay, we watched it for you to give us what was going on. And I watched a little bit of it. I wasn't interested.
Well, the thing was that there was nothing.
But did you watch the debate?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
well, and there was nothing new in the interview.
No, nothing.
And because, like, I didn't even bother watching the highlights because, I mean, the first thing that I saw anybody say about the Tucker Carlson interview with Donald Trump was, well, he didn't really say anything new.
There was nothing outlandish. There was nothing incendiary that he said, and because of that, I really didn't pay attention to it.
Which that was his opportunity to, like,
but to say what?
Lay out the agenda, or really
what agenda?
Or really take out, or really, you know, go after all the people that were at the debate, you know, because look, you know, for me, this was Trump's big missed opportunity.
If he would have done the interview live, then I think it would have been a better opportunity. Because that means he could be either doing live responses of what's happening and go on these tangents. But it was
been interesting.
But it was pre-recorded,
Yeah.
so it's like how that one, it's kind of like old. So that right there doesn't make any sense. And two, then there's nothing there, unless if he was at least like 20 minutes behind the debate, at least we would be getting responses from what he's saying.
And it's like watching it's like watching a recorded sporting event.
Correct.
It's like, you know, the outcome.
Correct.
Right? Tucker's not really gonna curveball.
No crazy
Trump.
questions. No crazy questions. No crazy responses. It's all scripted. I get why he needed to look more normal. And again, that's not what I expected from Trump's interview, but that's kind of what I expect from my president's interview. That there isn't anything like outlandish, which is what he gave us.
He played it, I think, politically, strategically, the way that they wanted him to, which is safe.
Yeah.
Because really what they wanted to was come out of that night not losing any ground, which is what they were afraid of if he would have attended the debate. But taking off my anybody but Trump hat, okay, because I do think that as a party, we need to move on because of all the baggage, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm indifferent.
All right, that's a whole other conversation. He missed an incredible opportunity to just shut down the primary, to basically run away with it, be done with it, destroy everybody, and just call it a day.
I think it made sense for him to skip the debate. I still think it was a good decision to make, even there is some showing that there has been some movement with inside the polling, showing that DeSantis and Ramachandran and even Nikki Haley had great nights. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think,
you can call him Vivek.
What did I call him?
No, I saw you struggling with Ramaswamy. So
I'm usually really good with my Indian names.
Yeah.
I love that community.
Well, it's so funny because watching him, like, he reminds me of so many guys we know here in Tampa. like
smiling while you're getting attacked.
Yeah.
We know people like that.
The energy.
Yes.
Like that, like going like 100
they
energy.
don't know how to go anything but that.
Right.
We literally know people like that.
And the fact that when you challenge them, it's like it fires them up.
Yes,
you know?
and they
like,
smile. They're ready.
Yeah.
They want to go on the attack. Like,
Right.
I've been ready for this my entire life.
That's right.
But I think it was still a good idea that he didn't attend. I agree with you. There was a possibility that if he would have attended, I think it would have been almost like everyone attacking everyone because no one wants to attack him. Because there wasn't as much Trump bashing as I thought there would be. There was, but not to the extent.
But see, I think Trump would have gone there and just destroyed all of them.
He would have walked over to the two guys at the end and pushed their panels like off the.
Well, because
what's the point of them even being there?
The problem is they would have been this is why I'm saying it was a missed opportunity, because in that moment you would have forced every candidate on that stage to choose what side they're taking.
But they did choose.
Are they going to ally?
They did choose.
Or are they going to ally, or are they going to attack? No, because the minute you make that decision with him there,
oh yeah, it's different.
He's coming after you. And he's not going to let you walk that back.
Again.
With him not there, they could play both sides of the fence. They could say, oh, well, he, overstepped the Constitution, but at the same time, like he's a patriot and blah, blah, blah. Like they were playing both sides.
Of course.
Right? If he had been there, he would have eaten them alive, every single one of them.
But
and that would have been the end of the primary and his, which some people are saying it already is.
August. We got stuff to go through. We still got primaries to go through.
Yeah, but again, and any candidate or campaign will tell you, like, the quicker you can get rid of your opponents, the better. And I think if he had been there and done what he did in 2016, he would have cleared half the field right out of the gate.
I think what's going to continue. At least I agree with you. I think I don't know if I agree with you on that, honestly. I think what would have happened would have made it more of a circus. I think it would have been more of a clown show, and I don't think we need that right now.
Yeah, but most of those candidates are already in the single digits.
Majority
if he would have come in there and basically confronted Pence for what he considers a backstabbing.
Yeah.
All right. And then the other two people that nobody has any clue who they are, Hutchinson and Prager or Bruger or whatever. Yeah. And those three, boom, done, bye. Right? Because Pence really can't save face at that point.
But Pence already did a horrible job to begin with. People were not happy with the Pence
No, absolutely. And we'll get into the poll numbers here in a second. But I think he missed the opportunity to clear some of the field.
I think chaos allows for him to continue to get above 30%. Because, again, that's all he needs when it comes to the Republican primary. The more people in the game running, which will take away from the independent no more Trump.
You're saying it strengthens the other candidates?
No, I think it allows for...
Because I do think that's maybe been part of the strategy. If he knocks out some of the candidates, it makes the remaining ones stronger.
It allows to coalesce.
Right.
But if you keep a field of 8 people and then Trump, it's gonna wash away that never Trump voting block, because then it doesn't take the majority of the primaries. Again, the goal of the primary is to get out of it at least the majority of Republican voters. And we both know Trump is never gonna go below 35-40%. And that right there tells you that this game is already done.
No, they have to coalesce.
But they won't.
Down to at least maybe 2 or 3 in the primary total.
DeSantis isn't going to get out of it.
For somebody to be able to go toe-to-toe with Trump.
Ramaswamy's not going to get out of it. Haley's not going to get out. Pence, I don't think he's going to get out of it.
Vivek, not at this point.
I was so annoyed with Chris Christie.
Yeah.
I thought he would have been better prepared. I think he really thought Trump was going to get there.
To me, Christie feels like the spoiler. Christie feels like the guy who didn't get invited to the party, but he showed up anyway.
Correct. I don't even know how he's getting 3.8% of the vote. That doesn't make any sense.
Just name ID.
Tim Scott, I know why he's there. It is what it is. Nikki Haley, I understand. The others, I have no idea who they are, nor do I care.
So I want to take a look at this because, again, it's kind of like when, the Kennedy-Nixon debates, when they talked about how depending on how you consume the debate depends on what you took away from it.
If you watched it, if you heard it.
If you listened to it. I was in the car, so I was listening to it on the radio. And I knew that my experience was going to be different than the people that are watching it. And once I watched the highlights, it definitely seemed like a different environment than what I was listening to on the radio.
We were prepared to, and we did. Lauren, the wife and I sat down. We watched it. We had popcorn. She had we really wanted to sit and watch. Yeah. And we loved Nikki Haley. We absolutely loved Nikki Haley.
She did great.
I think she did great.
Yeah.
DeSantis, even though we love him as a candidate and we're rooting for him as a governor, it was almost like it was lukewarm kind of situation.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad, but
it was safe.
He wasn't bad, but he wasn't good.
He played it safe because I think had he overplayed his hand, he would instantly have become the target.
He was already the middle.
The fact that Christie didn't touch him
at all,
that was a big save for DeSantis.
Yeah, but the amount of of dung that was like thrown at the wall to try to get it with the sweeping comments from Vivek.
Right.
That were just insane.
But that's why I think DeSantis
that's what annoyed me.
That's why I think DeSantis got spared, because he didn't insult anyone.
No.
He didn't insult anybody on that stage, and so they didn't insult him.
No, because he needs their donors.
Right.
He needs their voters.
He didn't give them the opening to fire back.
And that's what I'm saying. When Pence goes down, when Chris Christie goes down, when even Scott goes down, I think they're all going to go to DeSantis. I think those votes go there. But again, that doesn't get us to 49%.
Well, what's crazy is that, according to, again, this is 538, they did a poll with the Washington Post and Ipsos. The overperformers were, in this order, DeSantis, Haley, Ramaswamy, and Tim Scott. Which I agree with that.
I agree completely with that.
Yeah, like that to me lines up. I was watching a lot of post debate coverage, and I'm like, no, like I everybody had it wrong.
Well,
and this, now that I think people have digested it, this makes more sense to me. The ones who underperformed, like we just talked about, Mike Pence, Burgum, Christie, and Asa Hutchinson, in that order.
Well,
I mean,
even though Mike Pence had the most talking time with that, I think almost 14 or 15 minutes, he still said nothing. He still said nothing.
Right.
And that annoyed a lot of people.
The only thing he said that I thought was his most poignant moment, that I think had he maybe done it sooner or maybe in a different time or something, was when he said that, when he basically said flat out that Donald Trump, put himself above the Constitution. That to me was like a jaw-dropping moment.
Correct.
And that could have been a catalyst for him to kind of gain some momentum. If that didn't do it, nothing's going to do it.
But that should have been done 2 years ago.
Well, but I said this, online, is that to me, Pence comes off as like a 1990s candidate. Like, he's not going to say anything you haven't heard before. The talking points are all there. The same ideas are all there. Also, he's a 90s Republican.
Also, his demographic isn't with him.
Right.
His voting bloc isn't with him.
Yeah, they're all Trump.
So then who is his people? These never Trumpers that are very upset, and some also super conservatives at the end of the day. However, that is not a big enough block to get you, which again, we can see with the voting numbers, because at the poll that I have with him, he's at 5%. 5%, which even then I think it's not even true.
Yeah.
And so that is not enough to get you. He's not going to become vice president, of course, and he doesn't have enough to last the first few rounds of the primaries. So I don't know what the purpose of him being in this race anymore is.
Yeah,
So I had a very large conversation, because people don't understand. A lot of people, don't understand, because they're like, oh, if we get a DeSantis Trump ticket, or we get a Trump,
never going to happen.
Or we get a Trump and whatever, one of the other or Ramaswamy ticket. That's Vivek. That's never going to happen, and it's not because I don't want it to happen.
Yeah,
but because
Vivek is a long shot, because he's already said very vehemently that he does not want a VP slot. So you'd have to walk that back, which they always
can walk it back.
They always say they don't want it, but then.
But my biggest problem with him is that he's either running for a cabinet position or he's running for the spoiler, and I don't know what that. I don't know. But what I think
regardless who it is,
he has the money to do what he wants.
Well, and regardless of who it is, if Trump is promising you a 4-year term, and you truly take advantage of that opportunity as a vice president, think about it. You're the shoo-in. You're the shoo-in, because nobody's the clear front runner in 4 years.
If Kamala Harris was more of an active vice president, if she was more legitimate, if someone had fired her speech writer the first week of her in her office,
honestly, I think
she might have been a much more better candidate.
I don't think she listens to her speech writer.
I don't think she cares.
No.
I don't think she cares at all.
No, I think she feels that she's the star.
Yes.
She knows better than everybody that's around her.
And I don't want to say it, but we have politicians that were in the position to rise, and they got themselves stuck because of who they are, the people they surrounded themselves, or their significant others continually to causing problems in their private jets that were reported, not reported.
Yeah.
And those are the things that happen, that you get into your head. You have a group of people around you that think that you're amazing and that you're perfect, and they never say you're wrong. And then we have Kamala Harris laughing in the middle of an election cycle, and you're like, this is a nightmare. And so again, if she would have done what she needed to do, I think she would have been a much better I think the party would have gotten rid of Joe Biden much faster.
Yeah, and see, so Haley, I think, would definitely, she took she took an ambassadorship from Trump. I think she'd take a VP slot from him.
They've already worked together,
right?
And Tim Scott
and he won't
Trump
insult
work
her.
together.
If you realize, he hasn't insult
done
her
it yet. No, even though she does jab him every once in a while with some stuff, it's not legitimate.
Well, and according to the poll in terms of who won and lost the debate, she had the least negative. Obviously, she came in third.
Her and Scott had the least negative.
She came in third. You're right. But her and Tim Scott came off with the least negative feedback from the debate. But again, DeSantis, Ramaswamy, and Haley. I mean, Ramaswamy, I think, came in and did what he had to do given his situation. He put his name on the map. He made himself a legitimate candidate.
He's the most Googled person afterwards.
Yeah, like he had some misses, policy wise. He had some answers that didn't quite, make sense.
And this is the thing I think with a lot of people don't understand. A lot of our presidents have not been foreign policy looking presidents.
Yeah.
The last time we had someone that was foreign policy looking was Papa Bush. And again, he ran the CIA, for Christ's sakes.
Right.
And now you have Joe Biden that has, and the only reason why he's doing more international stuff is because he's been in office for the last 50 years. And so that he actually knows what to do when it comes to international politics. I think we need someone. And so I'm not surprised that Vivek didn't know what was going on. And he said, we're not going to support Israel. Like, these are things that you just cannot say in a room full of Republicans. That's just not how that works. But because he's isolationist and he doesn't want us to be in war, which, again, that's a point that he wants, that's fine. But you can't be in a room with all these neocons and think that's not going to get pushed back. And she brutalized him in those points.
It was a very telling answer, for a political novice, right? That's a very common kind of response for a political novice.
When he said it, I was like, ugh, this is gonna be bad. And then Haley just went to the throat and ripped it out. I was like, oh, okay, this was a nice little Roadhouse moment there.
Yeah. And here in terms of who gained or lost the most support before and after the debate, again, Haley jumped 16.5 points, went from 30.2 to 46.7% from before to after the debate. Trump actually lost about 5 points, not a big deal for him. DeSantis gained about 4.5 points.
I'm so surprised.
So again, for DeSantis, I mean, again, I think this is about as good of a result as you could expect. Ramaswamy, I don't think got as big a jump as he might have wanted, but he went from 40.8 to 46.3. So in terms of people who were considering supporting him, but again, I mean, hey, kudos to Nikki, man. She came out and she knocked it out of the park for her campaign.
I think at the moment we're watching the vice president races. I think that's what we're looking at right now. And again, I don't like saying that out loud because I would really enjoy a DeSantis presidency, even though his rhetoric has turned a lot more conservative than I would appreciate in certain topics, which I'm not happy about. But at the end, and I don't know who's leading his team anymore. I know they just did a switch up with the main cabinet with his group, and I think they tried to fly before they could swim, and it's apparent that there's a problem.
Well, it's one of these things that, again, it's sometimes you don't grab the people that got you there in the first place early enough. And there's some great Florida talent that basically got left on the table, or they went earlier with a different candidate. And again, it shows. I mean,
Washington looks shiny, and the consultants from Washington try to tell you that they know what they're doing, and you realize no one knows what they're doing.
No, and even things as what's seemingly inconsequential as how they set up events. One of the worst examples of kind of this team has been the fact that his events look terrible.
Yes.
And I know the production team that used to do his stuff all over the state of Florida. And if you look at his gubernatorial stuff or anything before the campaign compared to now, I mean, it's a huge difference. And again, you have to keep in mind not only who's there at the event and what an impression that gives, but also how the media is covering it.
Correct.
And how they're going to photograph it and film it, and and so you can't have like a small space with like a single little flag, and like you've got to always look like you're the big dog.
We've had these long conversations,
Yeah.
and we've had them at 2 o'clock in the morning at an IHOP leaving a political rally.
Yeah.
And we have the discussion because normally we're on the team to do registration or to make sure that volunteers are there, to make sure that media's there. We make sure because we know everyone.
Right.
And you can tell when the events are done correctly because it is as smooth and chaotic at the same time.
Yeah.
The amount of effort that is put into making sure that the amount of flags match the same number on both sides, so it's symmetrical and like things are in order. Like you may think they're not important, but they are very important.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of minutia that has to get done.
Well, they'll make your campaign look big,
Yes.
and important, or on the decline.
You get the fire hydrants with the big flag flying in the background. These are things you have to do, and we saw all that stuff. But there has been a distinct difference. 'Cause I was looking at something that happened in Iowa, and I was like, "That's Iowa." Like that's the kind of that's the kind of outing you wanted to show for an event. This makes no sense.
Well, and you and I both know who one of the guys who's behind Vivek's campaign.
Yes.
Who has led Rick Scott's campaign on multiple occasions as governor and senator.
Yes.
And
that was a tight ship.
And has obviously been very successful in that front.
Yes.
He also led, I think, Florida for Trump's campaign in 16. The guy's talented.
Yes.
And you don't think these behind the scenes people make a difference, but I can guarantee they do, because that's where the experience comes into play. Especially for a first time candidate, you need somebody that understands how to do these things. Somebody that understands how these events need to look, how they need to be executed, and how to take advantage of opportunities like a debate, like an Iowa State Fair.
The banners, people taking in information, building out your volunteer base.
Right.
I remember we would have 20, 30 volunteers just to make sure the lines went through accordingly, because you don't want 5,000 people taking 6 hours to get into the convention center.
Well, and who's supposed to be there? Who's not supposed to be there?
Well, I remember we were doing a Trump event at the Florida Fairgrounds, and I remember getting a text message from a volunteer saying, "Hey, this very radical, like rainbow-colored girl with hair, like rainbow-colored hair, who is extremely anti-Trump, has said that she was going to go to the rally tonight." And so I, knowing this, made many copies of her picture, made sure that that we were aware who she was, and I walked the line 3 or 4 times, and I found her before she was able to get through security. I was like, "Hey, I don't think this is going to work. I think you need to go." And she already had one of her friends with her who tried to get away or try to move away, and I was like, "Both of you kind of just need to walk away because you're not going to get in. This is not going to happen."
And it's nuts. People don't realize that this actually happens
all the time. All the time,
especially now with social media. Like that kind of stuff gets flagged
all the time.
And again, it doesn't take law enforcement to kind of figure out who's coming to this thing and making sure that you don't get in.
Yeah, because you know what they're going to try to be disruptive during the time when he's talking, and she couldn't do it, and her group couldn't do it. And there are other times where they get in and they make a commotion, and then the security has to get them out.
What I thought was unfortunate was a lot of the Trump supporters who were disrespectful to DeSantis in Iowa. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, that's the kind of environment that Trump has created. But again, like, it's part of what he's created, and it's hard to put that genie back in the bottle. You know what I mean?
It's impossible. It's impossible to do that now. But again, I think and this is something I kind of want to talk about with like hate crimes when it comes to other Republicans, that you have Republicans fighting other Republicans because of the support or non-support of certain candidates. My not willing to verbalize my vote for Trump has gotten some people very upset. We have friends that we know that have gone on television and have made comments in support of the governor, and then they get messages at 2 o'clock in the morning, and even death threats on emails or text messages, and you're like, who has this kind of time?
Right, exactly. Yeah, well, obviously at 4 o'clock in the morning. I mean,
that's what happens when you work at IHOP at the late night shift. I mean, that's the only time you get to talk.
But I
apologize. And that offends anyone.
Well, and in talking about things that are going on with the DeSantis campaign, I want to go into our second topic, which is DeSantis's political hurricane
Yes.
that is kind of forming right now in Florida. It started off actually over the weekend. There was a shooting by what seems like a white nationalist, taking the lives of some African Americans in Jacksonville, where I think he has played this right. And obviously, they're trying to leverage some of the footage and things that had happened in Jacksonville against him. But where I think he's played this right is he showed up. He went to Jacksonville. Obviously, that was his congressional district, or close to his congressional district, more or less. He showed up to show accountability, to show responsibility, and leadership.
He took the heat.
The crowd, obviously not a friendly crowd.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they knew that going in. But as you and I both know, at those kind of events, there's plenty of law enforcement.
Correct.
So safety wasn't an issue.
Yeah.
Just not a friendly crowd. Now, the other thing is that we have a literal hurricane, in the Gulf of Mexico that is due to make landfall sometime, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday.
It's Wednesday morning at like 5 a.m. I think that was the last time I saw
Projection, right.
So I think the current projection is showing, I don't know. I don't have the current projection.
That's all right.
Yeah.
But the point being is that obviously takes you away from the campaign trail. Especially as you and I both know, the summer is kind of a dead time for campaigns, and now with the Iowa State Fair and that kind of thing, that starts to ramp these campaigns up because people are going back to their normal lives and they're going to start paying attention as we get closer to Super Tuesday.
Once the kids get into school, everything goes back to normal.
Yeah.
And that train of political activism starts up again. And that's something that I think a lot of people forget that is happening. This is the kickoff of when it comes to what's going to happen for the primaries, especially in Florida and other big states. The hurricane is projected to land at 7 a.m. on Wednesday. So it has slowed down a little bit.
Right.
I know it's going about, I think, 8 to 10 miles an hour going north, and we're just waiting to see when it does the turn because we always know it turns. It never is the projection that you're wanting it to go into.
Well, and for those of you who are listening, watching the podcast from wherever you may be doing so, to give you kind of an idea, we do this show based out of Tampa, Florida. We're in the outskirts of the city of Tampa. And so things are starting to shut down. I mean, schools have already been closed for the next 2 days. Certain parts of Tampa and Tampa Bay are being evacuated.
Closing. Everyone that lives on the coast of the Pinellas County or in a waterway is being asked to evacuate.
Right.
Now, there's some places that it's definite evacuation. Anything on the beach is an evacuation. Anything off of the barriers is we encourage you. And the governor and the emergency department said something very smart. And they're like, look, we don't need you to go to Georgia or go to Miami.
Right.
We need you to go about 10 miles in. That's what we need you to do, which I thought was ingenious. I have never heard that from someone. And I was like, that makes sense.
Because they know that if they truly sound the alarm for evacuation, that they end up flooding the interstate highways. And that's another thing they don't want, because then when this thing does make landfall, now you've got vehicles blocking the areas that they need to get to.
Again, this is not the first time we've done this, of course. I'm very confident within our emergency services to make sure that we find a way to organize all this correctly. I mean, where it's planning to hit is a very heavy, like, agricultural, farming, rural parts of the state, which I'm actually pretty encouraged that it's not hitting a large metropolitan area. It's hitting between Tallahassee and Gainesville. We could take out both state football teams. That'd be maybe perfect. You as a Miami
Your
person,
wife would not appreciate that comment, I'm sure.
I got married into it, so it'll be interesting. It's not as populated as other parts of the state are, so it's actually kind of interesting to see what's going to look like.
Right.
And it's going to be between a Cat 2 and a Cat 3, so we'll see what that looks like also. Again, being in Tampa, we just need to see where it's going to turn.
Well, and again, it just goes to show like how accustomed we are to these kind of things. Like, I have yet to like look at a single weather map. I mean, if not for the fact that people have been posting all this stuff on social media, like I've seen the projection maps, spaghetti models and all that stuff, because people have been posting it. There it is.
There it is.
Look at that.
Oh, the same map that I saw.
and so people have been posting stuff like this to obviously, share with people what's going on. But I mean, I haven't looked any of this stuff up myself, but you're right. I mean, obviously that for the state of Florida would probably be the best path for this, also because the Panhandle, man, the Panhandle just I don't know that they can take any more. I mean, it just seems like every year the Panhandle just gets.
Do I want to say they get
demolished.
designed to do that? Yes.
Yeah.
The Panhandle constantly gets hit, but that's
Right.
also the reason why it's one of the greenest parts of the state.
Sure.
That whole region, all the way to Georgia, all the way into the Carolinas, is so green because of
Yeah.
all the water and that we're going to get now.
Well, and why would you move there? I mean, again, it's like the people who live in Tornado Alley. You know, it's
Do we really
there's some people.
really want to go into this conversation?
No,
right now
I know. And look,
of
and
what
it's part
demographic of the population live in those areas.
and it also is some of the most beautiful parts of the state. Unfortunately, yeah. If they could wipe out what is it? All those little towns. Well, they got rid of all those little towns that used to be the big speed traps. You know,
Oh yeah, they got knocked out
I
think 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, they
with
closed
another
all.
hurricane.
Well, shocker! All those police departments were corrupt. Oh my god!
No,
I know they were making more money than some major cities.
we still drive like 35 miles an hour when we go up there.
You're still like traumatized.
Oh my gosh! Well, the wife used to do the drive all the time, and she learned what cities you can and cannot play around with. But no, I think the governor is correct to come back home immediately.
Yeah,
because there's one thing staying out in the campaign trail before the hurricane and coming back after, and there's another what he's doing now. I think he would have got criticized immensely if he was not here when those original warnings were up.
Right. Because again, then it's like, well, who's really in charge, right? And then
well,
you get,
then you have the examples of like the situation that occurred in Texas when with the whole the winter storm.
Yeah.
And you had the senator Ted Cruz in like Mexico during it.
Leaving, they literally caught him in the airport going to Cancun.
And you're like, I get it, but like he's not the person I'm expecting to deal with.
Yeah, it's not his job to deal with those kind of
But he's a
things.
politician, and people are always willing to knock him out on that. And then you have the president when it came to Hawaii, like sitting on the beach while a city is burning, and he's like, no comment. And then you're like, oh.
Now that was different. I mean, the president of the
horrible.
United States on vacation while Maui is quite literally burning.
The optics were horrible,
and it seems like they can't continue to get out of their own way.
It's like they never saw The West Wing. Like, I'm sorry, but we do this every election cycle. Lauren and I watch The West Wing.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, we see
need
this.
a
Some
refresher.
things have yet to change.
Yeah,
like we're still fighting, like arguing about things, especially that happened with then. And you're like, in the movie, things constantly get derailed, and the president has to come back, and the president needs to go there, or they're on vacation, they need to come back early. Like that happens all the time. Why? Because that's your job.
No, or the other thing that again was couldn't have been a worse response to the whole thing was not having a comment. To the fact that like hundreds of people have just died, thousands of people have lost everything, and you have no comment. Nothing, like not even a like, hey, like any kind of empathy. I mean,
heads need to roll. Heads need to roll.
Look, I know the drugs are strong, but come on, like.
Well, you understand, was it before pudding time or was it after pudding time? These are serious questions that need to be discussed.
Gordon pudding?
Did he have, well, that just causes a lot of more problems. Did he have a nap before it? Was that his nap time? Like, these are conversations that people are not having right now. But I think the governor's done a great job. Now, I will say, depending on how bad the storm is and his response will determine a lot. But we have really good responses.
Well, that was one of the things, again, that brought him to prominence, was that we had the hurricane that hit, you know, just south down in Southwest Florida, and it caused some horrible devastation. And he was there. He was responsive. It was active. Things got done.
The boots were white.
The boots were very white, and and the bridge. I mean, the bridge was the big deal.
It got built within like a week.
Yeah. Like they literally rebuilt a bridge in like a week.
Yes.
Which is incredible, especially when, you know, immediately after any hurricane, like you hear, even before hurricane, you hear the comparisons to Katrina, and you hear all the George Bush comparisons, and and so for him to kind of be almost the complete opposite of that, and go down there and get things moving and get things up and running, and to me that's leadership. I mean, because people don't realize it's not just the state that's involved. You got to get all these power companies involved. You've got to get all kinds of other resources that are not under the governor's leadership to chip in.
Shelters have to be open.
Yeah.
People need to start moving in the direction they need to go into. This all it's a delicate dance that we do every year. God willing, we don't do it, but it happens every year in certain parts of the state that this has to get done. I'm not surprised. I'm sitting in traffic in Tampa like a few hours ago, watching almost like 50 power company trucks drive through, and the traffic was stopped and no one was honking because we know what they're doing. They're getting ready to go, and they all need to get where they need to go. But that's expected.
Well, isn't it crazy that we treat in these kind of situations like we're treating like the power companies like first responders, because they are. I mean, they are first responders, but we've become that accustomed to how this this plays out, to know that, okay, we know what they're doing. Let's get out of their way. Let them get through.
I mean, when was the last time you had more than 48 hours with no power?
Right.
It's been forever. Now it gets knocked out every once in a while, and that's what happens. But then we also know that we have the infrastructure to get it back up and running within 5 to 10 hours. And if it's longer than that, then there's some issues. But you, as a Floridian, and I always tell the people that move into Florida, you're responsible for the first 72 hours. You need to be able to take care of yourself, take care of your family, the meds, the water, the food for 72 hours. That's what you're expected. I've been told that since I was in high school. And the reason why we have hurricane parties is because normally we have to eat it or it's gonna go bad. And so I think God willing, it drops down to a 2 or a 1 before it hits land. I don't think it will, but we're going to see what happens. So whatever the response is, and the governor is going to be there, and it's going to be in a part of Florida that's very much his country.
Yeah, like for him politically, I can already see that this is not going to be any kind of a major blow.
Something would have it would have to fall apart.
Well, it would have to hit a major city, to truly challenge him. And so really this is just going to be an opportunity for him to exemplify his leadership. And because again, like there's not any major cities that are going to be, hurt. Yeah, there's going to be some damage and there's going to be, some services that are disrupted and things like that.
There are many pockets of communities in that stretch. And we talked about it. There's a lot of small little towns up and down that coast, and because of the way that part of Florida is, there actually aren't that many beaches up there until you get to Panama City.
But if it's not hitting a major, if it's not hitting
Holiday, there's no more beaches.
If it's not hitting a major city, the media is not really going to care. Which could be the best thing for him.
But the media wants to see him get rocked and get him in a position of with his pants down, and I don't think that's going to happen. I think what's probably going to happen is another similar situation where why does he have white boots on? Like I think something, but that's so trivial, and that's the problem.
They're just looking for something to.
If his boots were the same color of his jeans, I don't think anyone would have said anything.
Well, and again, the problem is that, like they say, if you're explaining, you're losing.
Yes.
And the fact that he had to explain why the boots were white, and that sort of thing. And again, it reminds me of actually a moment that I had with Senator Rubio. He was actually not senator yet. He was on the campaign trail, and he was coming to one of his first events here in Plant City. Plant City, very rural community. So, strawberries, blueberries, you name it, they grow it in Plant City. And his wife, they're from Miami, took him to JCPenney and got him a flannel shirt so that he could fit in with the Plant City folks.
Complete opposite.
Mind you, it was a nice shirt.
Yes.
And he, as they say in Scooby-Doo, he almost pulled it off.
Yes.
If it hadn't been for his meddling wife. No, I'm just kidding. No, it was like one size too small.
Ugh.
It was like Miami tight.
Yeah.
It was like.
So it was a normal shirt.
Right. It was, I mean, she used Miami measurements. I mean, it was like tight. So, yeah, it looked.
So it was a sheriff's shirt.
And he played it. That's right. He played it off well.
We love you.
Yeah, he played it off well, but yeah, it's one of those things that it's trivial, doesn't mean anything, but it gets people's attention and it gives them something to poke fun at.
And that's what I think they're gonna find that within the next 5-6 days they'll find something to do.
The problem is that DeSantis is not Rubio, and he doesn't play those moments off well.
No, because he gets very upset.
He gets very defensive, insecure,
which has been something we've talked about. Which I think his demeanor is not there yet when it comes to the day-to-day political political. How do I even say this correctly without making it sound worse? He's not a. Who did he run against for the governor? I just forgot.
In the general?
Yeah.
It was the mayor of Tallahassee, Gillum.
No. That was the first one. This recent one.
Oh,
Charlie Crist.
yeah.
So Charlie Crist, even though I do not like the man, I have met him 100 times,
Right.
and he remembers my name.
Yeah.
Like
Politically, he's a genius.
he is very much. He can do that politicking. That's
Yeah.
great. I don't think DeSantis has that yet.
No.
And that takes years to build.
Yeah.
And he hasn't been in politics honestly that long that he hasn't got that yet.
No, he's a great leader. I think he knows how to get things done.
Yes.
But where he comes up short is the charisma. And again, it's like I say about Chris Christie. Chris Christie is Trump without the charisma.
Correct.
And the reason that Trump is even remotely likable is because of his charisma. The fact that he can make fun of others and himself, and he's quick, he's witty, and he's quick. You know what I mean? Like comedians have literally, said like how good he is off the cuff, in terms of his timing.
He's always been like that. And that's the thing. He's always been like that. So I don't know how you want to pivot out of this conversation. Do you want to move into the next one?
Well, I wanted to go ahead and just kind of bring up to the. I was going to say, since you hadn't been here, weren't here for the last show, we could either talk about maybe a topic you want to talk about, or I have Tampa's raising of the taxes that we can discuss.
Is that still happening again?
Well, I haven't gotten an update, but I know that they're obviously considering the millage increase, and our good friend Luis Vieira was reached out to us about it. He's opposed to it. He represents the new Tampa area, and we were trying to get him on the show, but right now is not a good time of year because of his kids and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, you were talking about bricks, and honestly, that is a massive story.
No, it's not.
The bricks?
It's not a massive story at all.
How is it not?
What did they do?
Well, the fact that it's all still continuing to coalesce, and that there's still that they're moving ahead with this deal to try to devalue the dollar.
No, what they did last week is the only thing that BRICS Summit knows how to do, is to talk about the BRICS Summit and to add people onto the BRICS Summit, because the countries that were added onto the new BRICS, which I don't even know what you call it anymore because they've added so many times, are countries that have no economic sense whatsoever. I mean, you added Ethiopia.
They have good food. I mean,
they have great food. You added Argentina, that is probably going to elect
even better food,
the farthest right president they've had in such a long time.
So that'll be short-lived.
Yeah, he'll probably get assassinated, honestly. That wants to dollarize the economy, because it's been such a crappy situation in Argentina.
That'd be amazing.
I think it would be great.
Like that. Yeah,
I was reading an economic paper talking about how if they did that for 20 years and went back to the peso, it would fix everything.
Wow.
Like, these are just crazy conversations.
Yeah.
The only way you add into the Middle East, and this is the funny part, you realize it wasn't for anything strategic that they added these countries. It was for geographic, and to add more pressure onto the idea that the BRIC nations, which was a concept built by a finance guy in the 90s for boomers to put money into bonds, and that's why they created the doctrine of the BRICS, and it doesn't make any sense anymore. Russia couldn't even attend because he would be arrested if he stepped foot in South Africa.
Right.
And South Africa was the best place to have this conference because they can't keep the power on for more than 3 hours. And that's why I'm like, this is just funny, because you have these countries that the only thing they talk about every 5-6 years is that they want to get rid of the dollar as the main dominant currency, but they have no idea how to do it, nor is the group that's in there now ever going to coalesce into some kind of idea. Can you imagine Iran and Saudi Arabia on the same position on anything?
Well, what I love is, America, in this situation turns out to kind of like to be the cool kid in the school, and all these other kids are trying to figure out how to take him down and
It's
take
like
him out.
it's like watching the Glee Club trying to make a thing of itself.
Well, and the fact that it takes so many of these countries to even remotely have the possibility of affecting the dollar in some way.
Honestly, I would love for there to be another currency that's able to take some of the pressure off when it comes to global situations. We thought it was going to be the EU.
Cool. China would love that.
China wouldn't love that. China hates the idea of
for themselves
of a decentralized dollar system because so the Chinese government.
Well, because they own a lot of it.
It doesn't matter.
But they also, they will do anything to weaken the United States.
No, they'll do anything to weaken their currencies that allows them to be a cheaper place to build and manufacture. That's their goal. They could care less about having the dollar reduced.
Yeah, but they don't want anybody going there.
They don't want anyone going.
They want people buying their stuff, but they don't want anybody moving there.
You can't get money out of there. So how on earth is the Chinese currency going to be a dominant concept when they won't even allow their own people to remove the currency out of the country because they have such tight currency manipulations? I mean, the economy is finally starting to show its weaknesses when it comes to that. The largest real estate company in the world has now filed for bankruptcy, and you have a situation now where 30% of the economy in China is just real estate.
What's fascinating to me is the ghost cities.
I love it. I think it's hilarious.
It's unbelievable.
And if you move people into some of those apartments, it loses value. That's the crazy part of it. The concept of it is immense. I'm so excited to see this finally starting to reverse itself because then you can see the manipulation. They won't even release unemployment records for young people under the age of 25 because it's so severe now that I think it's almost 40%. And you of all people should know because we come from South America.
But they're also on the cusp of a population crash.
Yeah, but we both know when a bunch of young people don't have anything to do all day long, that's ripe for a revolution.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what the Chinese are more worried about. They could care less what's happening in the BRIC nations. They could care less. They would rather focus on what's happening internally. And I think we're going to have a situation where Russia it's on its last foot now. I think China is going to be in that same situation before the end of the decade.
All right, so what story are you watching?
What story am I watching? The breakdown of the crypto war coin, the new world coin that just opened up, has lost 50% of its valuation. I thought that was hilarious. I'm very concerned about our part of the world, which is Central and South America. Ecuador's assassinations were a nightmare when it came to their presidential situation. I'm very fearful for Argentina and seeing what happens in there. I have a lot of concerns when it comes to immigration, and that's happening. So there's been a lot of those things happening that I'm pretty fearful about. But I think, and also the U.S. economy having a soft landing. I'm shocked that we've actually got to this point. And I think even though it hurt a lot of people with the increase of interest rates, and I think it's going to keep on going up, I think it did its job, which was giving us a soft landing.
Well, that could be the only saving grace for the Biden campaign.
Yeah, but the problem is it's almost again you're not warm, you're not cold, you're Luke.
Well, because if you have high interest rates, then you still have the appearance of it being a weak economy, and a terrible economy because again it becomes that much more expensive to buy a house, buy a car, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So even though you can say on paper, no, we had a soft landing, it doesn't matter. Yeah. You still have millions of people upset with you. What was his I think it's like 55% disapproval rate right now.
I think it's maybe even closer to 60 than that.
So it's ranging between 53 and 59% on disapproval, which is a crazy number right now.
Right.
But I don't know if that's enough to have Trump win. That's the crazy conversation.
Well, that's where, again, I think as Republicans, we're shooting ourselves in the foot because just about any other candidate could beat Biden.
No.
Yeah.
I don't know if any other candidate can beat Biden.
You
on the article that I was looking at.
If you see especially the DeSantis Biden matchups, DeSantis wins almost every time.
I was looking at that and I did not see that.
And again, as I told you before the show, it's more about the long game. The fact is that under Trump, then we risk losing the House, losing the Senate, and at that point, then what? We're dead in the water. He could very quickly become a lame duck president.
I think what's going to happen, I don't see the situation where where Trump wins and we lose the House. I don't see that. I think if Trump wins, or if a Republican wins, we keep the House, we'll still lose the Senate. And I don't know who's running the Senate right now, who's going to be running that campaign, because it was Rick Scott was responsible of the re-election campaign for the Senate. And they spent $100 million and got nothing for it, which shows you that nothing was done. Trump had a better understanding of the midterms when he said to shut the hell up when it came to the abortion situation. And what happened? We got destroyed because of it.
Sure.
So I think having Trump being the moderate when it comes to the abortion situation, and Nikki Haley's response on the abortion situation, I think is where the country is, not where the Republican Party is.
Yeah, but all those guys are just trying to win the elections. They're not, you know.
Yeah, but you had people like DeSantis and others that were very much farther when it came to the abortions conversation than it came to Nikki Haley. I mean, she at least was figuring out a middle pathway when it came to that conversation. And I think that's where the country is. And I think Republicans are realizing, I don't think Republicans are realizing that's going to bite us at the end of the day, is that if you are so adamant about a national ban, which is already should not be, I think the states should be able to do what they want to do and have that conversation. If you push for that national ban, you're going to get people coming out just to vote against you. And that's the goal, is for that not to happen.
Right.
Because I think you have a lot more people that are upset with Biden and that will not come out. If we can get that black vote, we can get that brown vote and get them to vote for the Trump, or not vote at all, that's the goal.
Which we didn't even talk about the arrests, you know, but, you know, certainly for next week, you know, it's the trial of all things is going to start the day before Super Tuesday.
If he's not convicted. Well,
and people are saying that this arrest, you know, is actually the polls are showing it's garnering him more and more support.
We talked about this years ago.
Yeah.
You keep on going after him.
Yeah. You're feeding the monster.
You're feeding the monster. But they are so in their heads that they're doing what the Lord wants.
Yeah.
And what the government needs and what the country deserves. And then he destroyed democracy when he wins.
Well, I'm going to bring in, there's a great TikTok video that I saw about this guy who broke down the mugshot.
I don't believe in Chinese companies. So
well,
I'm glad to see that you're a supporter
this
of the
young man
Communist
had a great
People's Republic.
That's all right. I'm sure they have all my stuff on my iPhone anyways. My Chinese-made iPhone.
Slavery.
But it was designed in California.
You got to make sure it's slavery built iPhones. That's why we're
I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Odds are our American shoes were probably made somewhere in South America.
Yeah. Well, again, the whole point of his thing, and I want people to see it because I think he lays it out very well, is that the mugshot really,
which is perfect,
validates both sides. Well, it fires up both sides. Like, liberals want it on a t-shirt because it's Trump's mugshot, and Republicans want it on a t-shirt because it's Trump's mugshot.
It's amazing.
And it fires both sides up equally.
I saw the mugshot of Giuliani and I was like, ugh, come on, Giuliani.
Oh, he looks so bad.
And then I see the shot for Trump. I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Again, I was not in favor of voting for him again until he was walked in New York.
If he were a villain in a Batman movie, like, that mugshot could not be more perfect.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Absolutely perfect.
Like, that is a guy who's out for blood.
We're all out for it. We want the system to burn, and that's the problem. You're at the point. Like, I think when they did it, when the New York grand jury came in, and I was so upset. I'm like, you really, we're gonna do this now in New York? I was so upset, and I was like, you know what, F it. I don't vote. I'm voting for him again. And I think we've had this conversation, and he's not my first choice, and he's not my second or third choice.
He's becoming the face of anti-government.
Yeah. And that's the worst thing right now when the polls tell us that trust in the federal government is at its lowest point. Yeah. And you know what? Honestly, and all these other streaming companies are doing their job, because we watched Waco last night, and I was like, burn the system down. We're throwing tear gas in. It's not an assault.
Hit the reset button, everybody. Oh my God! All right, well,
good times.
Thank you, Mr. Anibal, David Cabrera. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody listening, watching, whatever, wherever you may be doing so. As I'm still a little rusty from being away from the show for a while, I didn't really kind of promote or cross promote the show, but you can find us pretty much everywhere online. If you search Google, if you search Google and search the Yard Sign Podcast, you'll find us just about everywhere. You can also go to theyardsignshow.com. And of course, every podcast platform that you fancy, you can find us there as well. So tell your Alexa device, Amazon device, Siri to pull up the Yard Sign, and they'll do that for you.
Until they take over.
That's right. Thank you. We will be back next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Good night, everybody. Good night.